To me, Shirley's the kind of citizen that epitomizes citizen involvement, and kind of like President Washington used to talk about what citizen involvement is, in it for no other reason, not self-advancement, not political opportunity, not corporate advantage, just because it's the right thing to do. And Shirley Ritchie, to me, is my idea of a perfect citizen for our community. She's done an awful lot for Sarasota.
Shirley Ritchie was born Shirley Matkin in Liverpool, England on December 8, 1935. She was the middle of 3 children in England, an older brother and a younger sister. Then later, she had a half-brother born in the United States. Her parents came from starkly different backgrounds.
Mother had been raised in a little different situation than I was raised in. She went to boarding school, and she married my father, who was Norwegian and was an orphan. And she was fairly young when she got married, and her parents weren't too happy about it, but I guess they got over it, particularly after the first child was born.
Shirley's life began with physical hardship. When she was 3 years old, the family discovered through an accident that she had a congenital problem with her hips. She fell near her home, and when she was picked up, they noticed something was wrong.
My hips, the socket, it was oval, and the hip didn't turn, the joint didn't turn in it even right. So I had surgery and went in on Good Friday. I remember it because the hot cross buns were available. I was in the elevator, and I can remember asking my mother if I was going to get a hot cross bun. And of course, after that, I don't remember much until after the surgery.
Shirley remained in the hospital for 3 years. During that time, England was at war with Germany. Each day, the notorious buzz bombers would fly over the city. On one fateful day, the hospital where Shirley was convalescing was bombed.
And I was one of 3 survivors. God must have been watching over us. So I'm really a lucky person.
Shirley was 6 years of age. With the hospital destroyed, she was transferred to a convalescent home where she stayed for 3 months.
And when I went home, I can recall I had braces, which they call leg irons, and they were right up close to my hips, down through underneath the heels of my shoes. And if I could walk sort of like a Frankenstein walk, you know. And if I got stuck somewhere and toppled forward, I couldn't come up until somebody straightened me. So that was a big game with my older brother. He often tipped me, and on occasion would threaten me that he wouldn't straighten me up.
After she returned to her home, she attended public school in Warrington, England. Most of the other children in her class had attended preschool. Shirley was unable to do so due to her health. She felt that she was at a disadvantage when she entered her first grade class.
My teacher was a very large woman, I thought, and she sat in this big desk in the front of the room and always stayed in the desk. She never got out of that desk except to rap you on the knuckles if you did it wrong. And she had what she called the A row, the B row, the C row, and the D row. And based on your performance, your seat shifted. So my goal was to get in her A row by the end of the year, which I did do.
Shirley soon caught up academically, and although she could not keep up physically, she enjoyed playing the games she could, like jump rope and hopscotch. She especially enjoyed participating in the school plays.
We were taught Shakespeare, and I was in Midsummer Night's Dream one of those years, and of course, Mother and Father had to come to the play, and everybody was there, you know, and I thought that was a lot of fun to be in those things.
For Shirley and her family, tragedy soon struck again when her father was killed in a streetcar accident. With the war on and 3 children to care for, Shirley's mother was now the sole provider for her family. Their fate would soon change. During the war, soldiers were often housed in the homes of English families. The Matkins had been hosts to 4 U.S. soldiers. One was named George Jones. 2 years after her father's death, Shirley's mother and George married.
We always kidded him that we said the reason he married Mom was because in those days you could have you got 12 points per child, and if you had 36 points you could get out of the service. Well, since she had 3 children, It was an instant out for him, so we used to tell him that that's the only reason he ever married Mom, and he was a good sport about it.
In 1946, Shirley, her mother, and siblings began their trip to the United States. After spending 6 weeks in a camp waiting for their transport, the ship finally came in.
We left southeast England the last week in June and arrived in New York July the 2nd, 1946. Mother got us up about 4 o'clock that morning to see the Statue of Liberty. Since this was going to be our home, we were supposed to start getting this, history and all the facts.
From New York, the family traveled by train to Tampa and then by bus to their new home in Fort Myers, Florida. They soon arrived in Fort Myers and were met with a wild tropical terrain they had not expected.
Definitely there was a culture shock. I thought we maybe had sailed right past America and had landed in Africa because there were snakes in our yard. And very quickly we saw things like panthers, and we had fox. And there were strange fruits. In our backyard there were guavas, which I'd never had before.
When the family settled, they soon became a part of the community. Shirley attended Alva Elementary in Lee County near Fort Myers. Much to her mother's chagrin, she picked up on the native slang.
One word I remember picking up was ain't. I'd never heard ain't before. And I remember going home talking and using this word frequently, and my mother just got glassy-eyed. Do you know what you're saying? And I said, well, I hear it at school. That's what they talk about in America. That's an American word. Well, you're not saying that. So, I quickly learned it was slang and you weren't supposed to say it.
Shirley studied hard and also became involved in the school activities. She was editor of the school yearbook, a member of the student council, and worked on the newspaper staff. Shirley was an honor student. She was focused on going to college.
I knew I wanted to go to college because one of the things that I learned when I got to America, which was different in England, that if anything you were motivated to do or wanted to do, you could do in America if you would work hard enough. That you didn't have to fit in a certain class system. You could get there. And I'd made up my mind I was going to go to college and I was going to be a teacher.
Shirley graduated from high school in 1954. She entered the University of Florida on a full 4-year education scholarship. The scholarship paid for her books and tuition. Shirley went to work to pay for her room and board.
I was working in the cafeteria. I worked for my meals.
Shirley found Gainesville to be a different world from rural Fort Myers. Graduating in a class of 11, she was now exposed to thousands of students, and she found the course load to be more difficult than she might have anticipated.
I had to work really hard because I wasn't as well prepared as I thought I was. And I'd never made a C in school. And I made a C and a D my first semester, along with an A and a B.
She soon adjusted, and her grades returned to the level she was accustomed to. She knew she had to study hard because she wanted to be a teacher.
The reason I chose to be a teacher or wanted to go into education was I thought I could affect more people. And I hoped that I could motivate people who didn't think that they could do things.
During this time, she was dating a friend of her brother's named Dick. He had a roommate named Jim Ritchie. Shirley liked him, but didn't want to upset the roommate.
New Year's Eve, 1955, she had a date with my friend, and I insisted that she keep it.
Well, I went. It was a terrible New Year's Eve, not only for me, but for my date, Dick.
And then right after that, we started dating regularly.
They married in the Alva Methodist Church in Fort Myers on January 29, 1956, while they were on semester break. After a honeymoon in the Florida Keys, they returned to Gainesville. Like many couples, the Ritchies started their married life under meager conditions.
We had the typical old furniture that they had in the barracks, and it was a great time. I mean, one of the things we used to do, I used to make our own potato chips, fry the potatoes in the deep vat and so on, and we'd play cards with other couples, Jim made his own beer at the time.
Back at school, Shirley studied hard to finish her education in 3.5 years. Jim was ahead of her and graduated first. Shirley graduated the next semester in 1958. When Jim went to work for New York Life Insurance after graduating, the couple moved to Jacksonville, Florida. It was here that Shirley interned and had her first teaching job.
The first year I taught, first full year, I made $2,700.
New York Life transferred Jim to Fort Myers, and Shirley took a teaching job at the area's newest school, Allen Park. A year later, Jim and Shirley decided it was time for Jim to go back to law school. They returned to Gainesville, and Shirley began teaching in a small country school in Newberry, Florida.
I had 11 children one year, 1 girl and 10 boys. And I was in an old building that it was a barrack. The windows wouldn't shut tight when it rained, and it was just a building. But we had a great time. We had an old piano that nobody cared about, so the children played the piano and we marched and did things.
While here, Shirley was asked to teach at P.K. Young Laboratory School at the University of Florida.
And my salary went up to $4,400. So that was a big move and a big help towards getting Jim through law school. And being on the faculty, I was able to take a free class each semester. So I taught at the laboratory school and had an outstanding time there. I was the youngest faculty chairman my second year there.
In 1962, Jim received his law degree from UF and accepted a position in Sarasota. Shirley took a position teaching first graders.
I started teaching at Brentwood and taught there for a couple of years.
Back then, again, since kindergarten wasn't your first step into the public school form, it was really first grade. And so you learn, she would teach us our life skills that we would be using later in life, like how to raise your hand before you talk, or waiting your turn to go to the restroom, or washing your hands after going to the restroom, all the fun things like that we still try to use. I don't know if I'm real good about raising my hand anymore. She was certainly very comforting and would guide us. She also was very encouraging. I remember the reading times, reading Dick, Jane, and Spot and all the things that they did, and having reading time with Shirley and the other kids, and I remember those things, and they were very positive, and certainly put me on the right, going in the right direction, starting out on the right foot for my schooling.
In 1963, Shirley earned a Master of Education degree at the University of Florida. As Jim became more successful with his law practice, the couple started a family.
Jim and I have 2 children, Lisa Ritchie Craig, who is an attorney in Atlanta, and she has a daughter, our first grandchild, Olivia Ann Craig, who is 7 years old. Our son is James Patrick Ritchie, and he graduated from USF, and he is a realtor and a business person. Both children went through Sarasota High and the public schools in Sarasota County and received a fine education.
Their daughter Lisa was born on December 9, 1964, and their son Patrick 3 years later on December 26, 1967. During this time, Shirley left the teaching profession to raise her family. However, she did not end her association with the education system.
I volunteered. I was going in the classrooms working with children in what we used to call our volunteer reading aid program. And I was, of course, always a classroom mother, and, I did all the things that mothers do with children.
Shirley became involved with the Junior League in the late 1960s, which soon led to her volunteering with PALS, Partners Alliance Linking Schools, as a volunteer reading aide. Volunteers went into the classrooms to work through the classroom teacher to help the children with reading. Shirley served as chairman of the PALS board in 1984. From 1973 to 1978, along with 2 partners, she owned and operated PJ's, a ladies' retail store in downtown Sarasota. Of course, her main focus has always been education. In 1986, Shirley conceived and co-directed the Centennial Magazine, written expression and art expression of public and private schools in Sarasota County, K through 12. In conjunction with the Sarasota County Centennial celebration. In 1988, along with the late Robert E. Perkins and other community leaders, Shirley helped form the Public Education Foundation, dedicated to providing funding to teachers in classrooms.
The particular financial crisis due to a lack of state funding led to a situation where our science fair was going to be canceled, and the reading festivals, art and music programs, basically those overtones of education that make Sarasota schools the superlative entity they are today. And Shirley, as a citizen and concerned person with an education background, got with then the Selby Foundation Executive Director, Bob Perkins, and together devised a plan to have an education foundation in which charitable contributions could be made to that foundation to benefit the public schools.
When she said something, she meant it. She was somebody you could count on. If she said, I think what we need to do is something or other, you knew that you could count on that being done. She was somebody who always followed through on whatever the project was, whatever the plan was. She made it happen. She was the person who established the mini-grant program for all of the teachers in the Sarasota County area. She was the person who organized the science fair that has been going on for years and saw that it was funded. She's the person who made sure that she set up the Evening of Excellence program to honor young artists out of high schools and so on. So she was the person who, whenever there was an idea, whether it was hers or someone else's, she saw that it came to fruition. We held workshops and summer institutes and things like that for hundreds of teachers. Actually, we worked with probably somewhere approaching 3,000 to 4,000 teachers over a period of 3 years. In all of that, Shirley was the force, the volunteer force behind the Education Foundation. And so whatever project I was working on at the moment, she was the first person there to assist, to whether it was just to carry materials from classroom to classroom or to actually set up meetings so we could talk with parent-teacher association groups or principals or anything like that.
Shirley was so involved in setting up grants, classroom grants, that allowed teachers to use their creativity, to think of an idea that they thought would really develop the creativity of the students and the curriculum, submit the grant. It was read by a group of community experts, and then they were given these grants that just turned into marvelous activities for children.
I don't remember the exact numbers now, but it's something like $100 to $500, and it might be a videotape or a special program or a computer program or something that isn't in the absolute budget of the school system or in the teacher's budget, and it saves the teacher having to dip into their own pocket to come up with it. But I remember serving on the committee, and Shirley, of course, organized it all, but the responses we got from the teachers who would receive $100 or $200 grants for a micro program, and just how much they appreciated the thought of the community willing to step up and help them out.
About 15 years ago, Shirley Ritchie created this program. And she told me that at that time, they were just thrilled to receive funding, enough to be able to award 11 grants. This week, as a matter of fact, I just presented 219 grants to teachers across our community for over $106,000.
She has this way about her of making sure that everybody feels comfortable and important in their situation.
She's not just a giving, caring person, but the extent to which she cares is really born of those early years.
Shirley worked tirelessly at developing funding for education. She was instrumental in Sarasota County in the effort to acquire enough signatures to secure the education license plate. Shirley bought the first one in Sarasota County. The Outstanding Education Foundation fundraiser, the Evening of Excellence Dinner Art Auction, was Shirley's idea. She chaired it for the first 2 years, 1995 and 1996, and continued to work on this fundraiser each year thereafter.
It is an art dinner auction. We ask all the high school art classes to submit work based on a percentage that is equitable. And then we have judges. They select the top 25 pieces. Those students then donate that artwork to the foundation, and then we auction the work.
To see the look on the students' faces is just extraordinary. I mean, after all, to some degree, we're the enemy, but we're also
the admired people in the community, and for them to come and you see the kind of apprehension on their faces, and particularly those that have an alternative dress style, come in and say, okay, what's going to happen to me here, and then see the enthusiasm by which people bid on their art, certainly may be the first piece of art that they've ever sold. I mean, I don't think it's an experience that they will replicate for years and years to come.
In 1994, the Education Foundation established the Shirley A. Ritchie Endowment with a dinner held at Sarasota's Hyatt in her honor.
With my committee members, we are working to try to build the endowment so that all the funds that are raised in the future will go strictly for, not for operations or any portion for operations, but to go for programs for children.
Shirley Ritchie has made education the passion of her life. We asked her for her advice to those of the future.
To me, you have to know where you're going and know what you want and focus on it. And if you're going to volunteer, the same thing happens. And I think if you're going to volunteer, you have to remember that people are counting on you. You have to do what you say you'll do. And if you're in business, you have to do what you say you'll do. And I just believe that in America, you have more opportunity to do things than anywhere else in the world. And you just have to work hard. But if you work hard, you can do whatever you set out to do.